Alright, so to start this series off, we see the main character, Ragnas, who is welcoming Lady Felicia back home. However, as she is walking past Rangas, she fires off some sort of fire attack right in his face, which makes him fall to the ground. She then tells her butler, Belbedo, to not let that filth get close to her. Belbedo apologizes and says that the slave just keeps insisting on coming to greet her. Felicia then says that her mood is ruined now and that she is going back to her room. Belbedo says that he understands, and he then looks over to Ragnas before he punches him in his face. Belbedo walks away while telling Ragnas to go back and reflect on his actions and calls him a useless guy. Ragnas bows and apologizes. He then goes to a horse stable and lies on a bunch of hay while thinking that 2 years ago he was called the Child of God and treated as the greatest prodigy of the kingdom from the start. We then get into a flashback where we are explained that there is something called level in this world, the special skill that awakens when one turns 10 years of age. Ragnas was in the kingdom's church for that very ritual. We then see a couple of people talking, saying that the Child of God Ragnas is here, and they wonder what kind of skill he will obtain. We then see Felicia by his side, who starts to laugh. She looks at Ragnas and says that it's rare to see him nervous. She tells him that he is already level 52 and that the average level of knights is around 40, so it's to be expected. Ragnas says that it's not really like that, but Felicia tells him that he isn't the only one who is nervous, as she admits that she is also nervous. She then wonders what type of skill she will receive, thinking that it would be nice if she received a skill that makes her magic stronger. Ragnas then says that Felicia aspires to become a royal court magician. However, he admits that he still hasn't decided on anything, and Felicia just playfully mocks him. We then see that the ceremony went smoothly, and that Felicia got the power magic boost, which was the same that the great sage had. Ragnas tells her that it's really amazing that she got that skill, and asks if she isn't happy, and she says that she is, and that with this new skill, she has finally caught up to Ragnas. After that, Ragnas's turn came, and the surrounding area was in an uproar because of the rainbow crystal. The priest asks Ragnas what type of skill he received, but Ragnas says that he got the skill level reset and that his level will reset to level 1, and that his abilities will also reset every day. Ragnas is in shock, and even Felicia can't believe it. Ragnas explains that even the scholars of the kingdom looked into the details, but couldn't find any use for it, and after that, his life took a turn right away. We then see his dad, who is super upset and screams at him for getting such a trash spell. Ragnas tells him to please wait, and that it isn't his own fault. His father then screams even louder and tells him not to dare talk back and for Ragnas to know his place. But that's far from everything, as because of his level reset, Ragnas's engagement with Felicia has been called off. Ragnas can't believe it. However, his father explains that he and Notos have been best friends since long ago, and that there's no way that he would let her best friend's daughter marry a failure like Ragnas. He then says that he proposed an engagement with Georg, and he accepted happily, which Felicia also did. Georg then tells Felicia that she should say something to him. Felicia goes forward and uses healing magic on Ragnas. Ragnas smiles and thanks her for healing his wounds. However, Felicia tells him not to get the wrong idea, and that he just looked so pathetic that she at least made him able to move. She then tells him that she came to say goodbye and that Ragnas is just a nuisance right now. Ragnas tells her that he really liked her, not only because of the engagement, but because it was genuine. Felicia doesn't care though, and just tells him to forget about her, and she then leaves, saying goodbye. Ragnas is still on the ground and thinks that he has no one by his side anymore. After that, Georg goes forward and pulls his hair while asking what the matter is, and asks if he is so shocked that he can't even make a sound. Their father tells Georg that Ragnas doesn't hold any value anymore, and that since the second house still has Georg, there's no issue, telling them all that from now on, they should treat him like a slave, giving him minimal food and sleep in the horse shed, and notify everyone in the mansion about this. We then see that 2 years have passed since that day. Ragnas is in the shed and wonders if he will be like this forever. He says that Lucy is the only one who is kind to him in the mansion, and Lucy is then the horse, I would assume. Anyway, suddenly Ragnas hears a voice talking about the true meaning of this skill. Ragnas turns to Lucy and asks what that voice is, but she can't talk after all, as she is a horse. Ragnas then thinks about it again and looks to see if something has changed. However, he's still at level 1, his stats are also the same, and nothing has changed. But suddenly he realizes something, which is that his skill points are the only ones that are high. He thinks that he thought that there was nothing but demerits when returning to level 1, and thinks that just maybe it has all been a misunderstanding, saying that normally you gain 1 skill point for every level you gain, and with 822 skill points, In exchange for his skill being reset to level 1, he gets 1 skill point every day. Moreover, the skill points he earns while leveling up in a day will not get reset, thinking that if he can make use of his skill points efficiently, then if he is correct, he can become stronger than before. He starts to smile and says that he had given up, but that he finally found the true potential of this skill, and that luck is now on his side. He pats Lucy on the head and says that he will leave this place now. Ragnas tells her that she was the only one who was kind to him, and that someday, when he has proven his strength, he will come back only to take her with him, telling her that it's unfortunate, but that this is goodbye, and Lucy even starts to cry. Ragnas then starts looking super cold, as he thinks that he will teach those who abandoned him a lesson, and that with this power, he will once again rise as the child of God. We then once again skip forward to 5 years later, and away from his home in a town on the west side of the kingdom of Aswalef. We then see Ragnas asking someone if he is the informant Cliff, and Cliff calls it a sudden greeting. Ragnas tells him that he wants info on the skill crystal, and how much he has to pay for it. Cliff is a bit caught off guard, but says maybe 50,000 coins. Ragnas casually drops that in front of him, and tells him to tell Ragnas everything that he knows, and Cliff is in awe as he calls Ragnas super generous, and says that he will tell him everything. Cliff tells him to take a seat, and he says that he will start with the basics. He says that, first of all, it is used to awaken a skill in a child of 10 years old. That's what is commonly said. However, actually, there's another feature of adding skills, but it requires 100 skill points, so it's pretty rare. Ragnas thinks back and remembers that in his childhood, his father told him the same thing when he had high expectations for him. Ragnas then tells Cliff that he already knows that. Cliff is a bit shocked and says that he's surprisingly knowledgeable. He then says that the information that he is seeking is really rare and only possessed by the royal family and priests. After that, we see Ragnas leaving and hearing a bunch of people talking about the kingdom of Elizabeth being destroyed by the royal family of the kingdom of Yuresh. We then get to Ragnas, who has gone to a forest, and he says that he crossed the border, but that this country won't let him use its skill crystal since he is an outsider. Then he thought that he had to gain some fame and joined a guild, but even when he gave it his all, it took a lot of time just to even raise his abilities from G to F. He then thinks that now the skill crystal that he has longed for is right in his sights, and says that he doesn't want to let this chance escape, so he goes into the forest to look for someone from the royal family of the kingdom of Yuresh. He begins to lose hope after looking for hours, but suddenly he hears someone screaming that she is there. Ragnas catches on right away, and he spots the girl who has a skill crystal around her neck. As she is running, however, she falls, but Ragnas eases her fall. The girl is surprised that it doesn't hurt, but suddenly Ragnas takes her hand above her mouth and tells her that if she doesn't want to be found out, then she needs to keep quiet. The guards who are looking for her are confused as she disappeared without a trace, and they then scatter around to try and look for her. Ragnas calms down and takes away his hand, and tells her that, first off, he isn't an enemy. However, she asks him if he really wants her to believe him in a situation like this. Ragnas tells her that if he releases her, then she might just run away again, and tells her that he wants her to bear with him until he is done talking. The girl says that she will listen and tells Ragnas to get away from her, and that it's rude to talk to a girl while pushing her down. The girl then gets up and asks Ragnas what his goal is, and that he doesn't look like the comrade soldier of Elizabeth. The girl says that if he is after money, then she has some on her. But Ragnas says that he isn't after money, but instead, he's after what's around her neck. She tries to say that it's just an accessory, but he calls it a weak lie, and says that it's a skill crystal, and asks her to please let him use it. The girl says that he must know its true powers, and he says that of course he does. The girl then says that it's all the more reason that she can't give it to him. Ragnas tries to reason with her, however, she says that she can't trust him. She says that even if he isn't a soldier, then he might be a bandit or something like that. Ragnas says that he isn't, but the girl tells him to prove it to her. Ragnas then gets on his knees and asks her how he can make her believe him. The girl thinks for a bit before putting out her hand and telling him to become her slave, which just leaves Ragnas in pure awe. The girl asks if Ragnas didn't hear her and repeats herself, but he says that he heard it and that he just thought that it sounded crazy. However, the girl says that she is serious. Ragnas thinks that generally slaves are criminals or their relatives, and that being a slave is proof that you have committed some kind of crime in the past, thinking that back in Zweit he was only treated as a slave and that they didn't make him sign a slave contract, which was why he was able to escape. The girl then says that there is nobody by her side right now, and that if Ragnas becomes her slave, then he wouldn't be able to betray her now. Ragnas says that he gets it, and that she needs someone who won't ever betray her. The girl says that he is correct and that she needs compassion right now. Ragnar says that he can't blame her, but a slave contract is wild. However, on the other side, the merit is that he will be able to use the skill crystal whenever he wants, and also he will be able to find a companion who won't betray him. He thinks that the master can only punish the slaves when they've gone against the will of their master, and in other words, if he doesn't betray her, she won't betray him either. And after thinking, Ragnar says that he is fine with it. The girl is a bit shocked first, but Ragnar then kneels down and tells her to do it. The girl then says that she, Nina Yuresh, commands to enslave this person in her name. After that, some sort of dark magic goes to Ragnar and he screams that it burns. After a while it's done, and he has gotten a black star on his neck. After the girl asks if this really was okay, but Ragnar ensure her and that he chose to do it. Ragnar then says that he did as she asked and asks her to now let him use the skill crystal. The girl then lets him know that even if he has over 100 skill points, he will acquire a random skill, which Ragnar already knows of course, and he then tells her to check his skill points, and she then sees that he has 3,047,000 skill points. Ragnar gets a smug expression, as he says that he can now acquire about 30 skills. Nina says that she can't believe it, and that she hasn't even heard of an ability called level reset. However, Ragnar just tells her that he will explain it later. He then uses the crystal, but is confused about what just happened, as his skill points suddenly went to 0, and he wonders just what kind of skill he got with all of his skill points. The skill then pops up, and it's another rainbow-colored skill. The skill is called Unrivaled, and it improves status for a minute. After use, the original status is halved, and it can only be used once a day. Ragnar thinks that the skill itself is good, but that the demerits are too much. Nina is curious and asks him what type of spell he got. He explains, and Nina then tries to check it herself, but she is in shock as she is unable to and wonders what type of spell the master is unable to check on. She then says that she can't check his level reset either. Ragnar thinks that maybe only the person themselves can check the rainbow-colored skills. Ragnar then assures Nina not to worry and that he will explain everything later. Still, Nina is a bit hesitant as his level reset ability sounds a bit too overpowered. Ragnar just smiles and asks her how she feels after making a guy like that her slave. Nina says that she is quite conflicted, explaining that she might not be that reliable as his companion and that Ragnar might be too much for her to handle. Ragnar then just smiles and tells Nina to take care of him, and they then shake hands. Suddenly, there were a ton of knights coming their way and saying that they had found Nina. Ragnar asks what Nina's level is, and she says that she is level 21. Ragnar thinks that he himself is only level 1, and that they can't win if they are up against the Knights Order of Elizabeth. He says, do or die, and thinks that he can only bet on his new skill, so he tells his unrivaled skill to activate. He then sees that all of his stats have gone up to plus 5S, and he is in shock as he says that the highest rank he has ever seen is S. However, he says that he only has a minute, and that it's not the time to be idling around, and that if the time runs out, they won't be able to escape. Nina wonders if all of his stats went up so much thanks to his unrivaled skill before asking Ragnar what they should do. Ragnar excuses himself before he starts to carry Nina. Nina can't believe it, and says that he can't carry a princess at a time like this. Ragnar just thinks that for now he needs to take Nina and make the knights scatter. Just then, the knights find them. Just then, Ragnar tells Nina to hold on tight before he starts sprinting, and thanks to his unrivaled skill, he is quicker than anything ever as he just runs away with no problem at all. Ragnar then says that they have returned to the west side and that they won't be able to reach them now. Ragnar then thinks to himself that it takes an hour to reach the forest from the west side, but it only took him a few seconds, and he is amazed by this new skill of his. After that, we get to the king, who asks someone named Julius if he has found Nina yet. He is angry and asks him why he thinks that the king took so much time to destroy Rojamel, Diane, and Yuresh. Julius just says that he truly apologizes, but tells the king that the troops moved just like he ordered them to. The king only gets more angry by this, as he tells Julius not to give him that crap and to know his place. Julius then once again apologizes for being impolite. The king tells him that this is his last chance and that if he fails this time, then his head will fly. He then starts talking to some sort of chest and says that just in a bit, her daughter will be his and calls the chest Olivia, which leaves me a bit confused, but whatever. Julius then thinks to himself that the king is the one who should know his place and calls him an ugly pig. He then says whatever and thinks if there is someone really obedient and easy to use. He then calls out to Forlock, and Forlock goes forward. Julius tells Forlock to make his squad search for Nina Yuresh and that this is an imperial order, so he needs to see it through. Forlock just says that he gladly accepts it.